You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com. Well, welcome everybody to an abridged or a different type of Workshop Wednesday. It's still casual conversations for serious workflows, and still brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you can keep learning QuickBooks your way. However, we're not live, but you're watching this live, so it's a little bit of a time shift. So we're trying this new thing, and the thing is that the goal of what Shanna and I were trying to do here is get through the entire series of job costing by the end of the year. So in order to do that, some holidays came into play, and so doing a live workshop on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is probably not what we're focused on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Do you have a big family thing planned for Thanksgiving, Shanna?
The last several years, since my sister-in-law and her husband moved back from Colorado, she hosts every Thanksgiving. So it's been nice. It takes it off my shoulders. But I always host Christmas. We take turns. How about you? What are your plans?
Yeah, we're going to fly back home to Pennsylvania. Just got here to Florida and gonna brave the elements by going north, but it's important to see family, and that's what we're grateful for, is to have family and friends around. That's what we're going to do. So that would be really challenging to try to do the workshop not in the comfort of my own closet here that I'm in. So our topic today is the fourth part of our series of 7 in the job costing. We're grateful and thankful that you're still sticking with us for these topics. But today we're going to be talking about payroll and labor and time and those mappings and those kinds of best practices in job costing. So we're going to throw up the question of the day. What are your best practices for handling payroll and job costing? So as we'll go through some of these topics, put your best practices or concerns or comments in the comments or chat, and we will be able to respond to them after the workshop, because we won't be doing this live. So Shanna, you had mentioned a couple times in the prior sessions that we've had that would you say the majority of your clients are, you call them T&M, like time and materials, and then you mark up those services. Is that pretty much a standard practice for your business and your clients, or does it depend?
It depends. But a lot of our clients are a mixed pot. Some are, just because we also have some that are in very different areas that have different requirements and all of that too. So from a building perspective, but maybe even from a tax perspective. So we've got a handful that do T&M, which I prefer the most, because I do think it puts our clients under more pressure to make sure that they're remembering to capture everything, because they obviously are like, I want to make sure my money gets paid back, plus that markup. But we also have others that do fixed. We have some that do draws. So it really does vary, and it varies based off of the project type.
Got it. So do you typically find that you're using the built-in tools inside of QuickBooks, or do you do you venture outside of the QuickBooks ecosystem for time tracking purposes?
Time tracking, we're using mostly all integrated within QuickBooks. For payroll, we do have several on QuickBooks Payroll, but we also have others that we have on that ADP platform.
So, do you find that there is a pro and con when it comes to doing payroll inside of QuickBooks or outside of QuickBooks when it comes to the job costing? Does that make more work for you, or does it not bother you because you're getting more out of the things that those kinds of services?
So the ones that do T&M, I keep them in QuickBooks because of the integration and making sure, like I said, that it's capturing everything. The ones that are not time and material clients, some of them also might be a little bit differently structured. So they might have some of the states might require them to have some additional benefits that they offer to their employees or have different taxes that maybe QuickBooks doesn't necessarily help out with that ADP does. Those are the reasons we have them moved around. But for the majority of our clients that do T&M, we are using their time tracker and we are using their payroll for the ease of how everything flows together.
Yeah, and as you were talking, a thought occurred, like the things like that ADP offers outside of more than just payroll, workers' comp, and those types of things. Do you find that a service like that for contractors is actually a better fit, or you can manage the workers' comp inside of the QuickBooks payroll system as well?
Their workers' comp platform is a little bit more new, I believe, over than what ADP has. I also think ADP just has a little bit wider of a reach with companies from that perspective. And then they also handle a lot of the audits that from the payroll side of stuff. So that's a really huge help because the audits for some of our clients can be really time consuming based off the state that they might be in and the additional stuff. So having that extra help that ADP offers by covering that and taking care of that side is a big benefit to us and to my client from the fact of accuracy, no human error type.
Yeah, it certainly is something to consider, right, when you're determining which is the best way to go. But what are the challenges of getting time entered that you've experienced over the decades or so that that you've been working in this space?
Even the clients that we have that are utilizing ADP payroll, I still have them using the integrated time tracker within the QuickBooks so that it's still easy enough. So we've got a document that I've built out that is an easy export from ADP. You drop it in the document and it helps us and gives us that journal entry and that pivot table look that says, here's a journal entry to enter it and how based off of the hours logged at certain jobs in the time tracker, and then what the actual payout and taxes and benefits were for each of the employees. So it would be nice if ADP, and I've talked to them about it a handful of times, if I could easily take a timesheet and enter it, but it's a completely separate service. And so if I use their time tracker, it probably would be able to break that out for me. But the cost difference for some of my clients and the ease of using their QuickBooks for them that they've been using for the last 10 years or whatever, that's just easier.
Yeah, it's it's always a balancing act of adoption and using the system itself and the increased benefit of using something that might be more integrated, but then you end up having to teach the workflow to to the client and their employees. And, depending on their type of employee, that might be a struggle.
Yeah, and field workers, they're just like the contractor themselves. They're there to get to the job and get the job done. And if they switch from doing one thing, maybe they're helping with some framing, and then the supervisor is, hey, I need you to go do some job site cleanup or outside, or I need you to go pick up some material. They're in their minds, it's not as important for them to remember to clock in and clock out and do all these different things as it is for us and for our clients, their their employer. So keeping it simple, keeping it, and so a lot of we have actually have a handful of our clients because of how easy the time tracker is with QuickBooks, where they've got old phones that they've just placed at the job site, and then the guys can, as they come in, just clock in, and so it's an easier sort of process for them, and they're not having to download it onto their own phones or remember to do that stuff. And then as they're leaving, the supervisor reviews what they did and just adds note as needed and all of that kind of stuff.
As you were talking through that answer, I'm just envisioning, a, a craftsman, a tradesman, that works mostly with their hands, just seeing a lot of this stuff as busy work, or you could call it a burden to them, which segues nicely to our next question about burden. What is burden in terms of job costing?
So burden being like labor burden, which is the cost of the employee essentially. So we talked about in QuickBooks, they have the ability for us to go in and put in what each of the employees is costing us. And so you're taking into account the wages, you're taking into account the employer taxes that are paid, benefits, workers' comp insurance, all of those things are a part of. And if you have overhead that you're also paying out, and overhead meaning, because that's, I think, what the category is in QuickBooks, it's called, I would refer that to being, some of our clients do like a gas allowance. So that in the paychecks, they're doing $50 every week or whatever it might be. And so obviously, as they're charging, that gas gets put as overhead because it's not going directly to a job. And so the $50 allowance is considered then to be part of that overhead calculation of determining what the cost is of that having an employee. And then from there, you then can use that employee section to then help calculate what you want that billable rate to be. So now that you know what your actual hourly cost is to have that employee or labor burden, that's when you can take it to that next step and determine what your billable rate will be for that person.
And so this really focuses, when we're talking about the burden, this really it speaks to the internal employees as opposed to subcontractors, right? Because it's real simple to lay all that out with a subcontractor because they bill the the business, and then they can then easily allocate the markup to that,
Right.
where the subcontractors handling all that other burden, lifting the burden, so to speak.
Yes. I would assume that they're taking into account their burden on their end and using that to determine what
Yeah.
to bill our client. Yeah. So subcontractor and materials are basically just handled differently. And the only thing I will say is that when it comes to those, the differences of the subcontractor versus the working with employees, is that one thing I feel like that sometimes that gets overlooked or forgotten about a lot is collecting insurance certificates. And that's a big part of when you start a relationship with a new vendor. And I'm throwing this out there just as a side note, just because I just completed an audit for a client. And we thankfully this time got all of our certificates from the vendors. But if you don't get a certificate from a vendor, then I feel like that gives you some wiggle room to negotiate pricing at that point too, or give your client wiggle room to negotiate with that vendor, because then they're covering the cost of having them on the job site during that audit.
Is there a specific feature or function in QuickBooks Online Advanced that helps with the labor burden, or is it you just do things manually, or does it depend?
Definitely. So I believe there's the functionality it's there, but you have to manually input that information in. So you're adding in, unless the pay wages automatically might come over in advance. And plus, I think we had to manually enter them. But obviously, your overhead, your insurance per hour, all that kind of stuff, those have to be manually added, but it will track it for you in the advanced too, which now with that estimate versus actual, it's giving you a lot more information as far as your profitability on your internal labor.
Especially accountants and accounting professionals who have used QuickBooks Desktop and going to QuickBooks Online. That has long been one of the gripes about the payroll in QuickBooks Desktop and the payroll in QuickBooks Online is that these job costing functions are were far superior in desktop, because you put in those hours and you split out the jobs and the earnings, and QuickBooks proportionately in QuickBooks Desktop does all of those other things to allocate the job costs appropriately, not just in the burden, but in the all those different expenses to the business as that aren't calculated in the simple of this are the hours that I worked or that the employee worked there, because there's more payroll costs that are associated with payroll for that hour that was worked, right? So, in the point I'm making here is that QuickBooks Online payroll is actually made a lot of strides, right? So, initially, that was the resistance to moving to QuickBooks Online when you're doing job costing, is that payroll is just going to be a nightmare to try to figure out what those true costs actually are. But now QuickBooks Online Payroll does a lot of these true cost allocations now and does it proportionately. Have
Yeah.
you dove into those features and functions as of late?
I've actually, going into 2026, I made the decision to take subscription fees out of my packaging. So I've rewritten my contracts. But as part of all of that too, because of the advancements that the advanced version has made, I was also going to my clients and saying, the way we are structured internally is we have our general fee, our fixed fee for doing bookkeeping services, essentially. And then we have stacked on top of that. So it's an additional cost if CFO services are required. It's an additional cost if you do profit first with us. And then the same for if we have a per project fee. So that helped me during COVID when things were going like above. Instead of having to constantly revisit contracts, I was like, let's just break it out into a per project fee, and that will help cover the true time that we're spending on doing your job costing. The more jobs you have active is what you'll actually get billed for. And that will help account for, from a financial and time perspective, our additional cost on doing all the extra work. My point of that was to say that because of the advances that Advanced has made, it doesn't work for all of our clients because we still do have some custom home builders that build on their own lots. So that functionality will work for them. But we do have others that this would work wonderful for. And with all the changes that they've started to push out too, that I'm seeing more and more of, this could be something that might have an additional cost because of the difference of plus versus advanced. but advanced might be able to remove the job reporting that we are exporting and building in QuickBooks or in Google Docs for our clients. So that was part of the push, was to say we could use this other product that's now got the sort of services and built in that could replace us doing the outside reporting. The per project fee comes down if you move up to advanced. So we are moving in that direction with several of our clients because of that functionality of the estimate versus actual and the change orders that we can track through it, the customizable stuff. And now obviously there's more options within it too, because I believe in an advanced time has the ability for us to, or QuickBooks has the ability for us to say for this labor code, this is the billable rate for this person. For this billable code for this person. So you could set up multiple ranges of billable rates for an employee versus it just being the one, which is really cool.
Talk about the different layers of complexity as far as figuring out what the cost of workers are, right? The simple one is the subcontractor, right? Because they just send a bill and then mark it up and put it on the invoice. You've got your costs versus your revenue to figure out or see on reports. And then you have the hourly, which they're going to be doing their hourly rate and their billable rate, but that's going to flow into internal payroll. What about salaried employees? How does that fit into the mix where they're not necessarily, their time is not as simple as an hour versus what they're actually getting paid? How do salary people fit into all of this mix with job costing?
I'll be 100% honest. The majority of my clients who have carpenters in the field are not doing salary. They are doing hourly. And so that really hasn't come across. Now for the supervisors and the project managers, those do have a salary. And what we've done is just determine or calculating out the labor burden in a very similar format based off of them doing 40 hours. Here's what that billable rate looks like. It's also higher, obviously, and it's a little bit more, it's higher, but it's also a little bit more profitable, I feel like, for our clients, which is why it's not as rare or it's not as common to see a bunch of hours of them working on stuff, which is the nice thing about that, being able to have multiple billable rates. Because if sometimes we've got a client who's maybe a carpenter is out. And so then the project manager has to fill in. We obviously don't want to have to bill their client for his rate as a project manager because we had a carpenter call out sick. The work still has to get done, but it also is the work of a carpenter. So they also want to bill fairly out. So that's a really cool function. But we handle it in a similar way as far as they track their time. They're tracking it to jobs. They also spend more administrative time. So it's not always all necessarily on a job site. Sometimes it is management of their team. It's the schedule build out. It's meetings with clients, all of that kind of stuff. And then obviously review and accuracy of the time put in for the jobs, scheduling for subcontractors, all of that kind of stuff. So it's still tracked and their time is still clocked. Essentially, it's just handled differently from the actually payroll side of it. Not really it.
And it's just something more to consider, and
Yeah.
that's why they need a Shanna in their life to help them navigate those changes. And then another aspect is this whole idea of unions and things like that, where there's an outside entity that's dictating working conditions or things like that. How do unions fit into all of this nuances of job costing?
I honestly have not had any interaction in all of the clients that I support across all of the US. So I would say, honestly, I guess I just don't really have much of a reply or feedback. I obviously know that there are unions that are present that represent, I believe there's the carpenter union. It also all depends on the location and where those people are and if they even are a part of that union. It it's probably handled very differently, and I would look at it as probably being a similar sort of way of management as when we talked about if you've got a client that works on a government job and there's prevailing wages and having to have that extra reporting and oversight. I would think that this would be a very similar situation.
As you threw out the term of prevailing wages, is other idea or concept of certified payroll, does that come into job costing? Talk about what that actually is.
Yes. It's definitely just a more complicated reporting. QuickBooks Desktop Payroll actually does provide that, but QuickBooks Online does not. The reports that it spits out also is very and dependent on what information gets put into it. So the time is tracked just very differently. We have to use a very specific set of codes that is put in place by the government agency of which this job is being operated under. So there's just more that goes into it. I actually prefer when our clients are not interested in doing government jobs because of the complexity that it brings about. There's great opportunities for some of our clients, but it
What?
definitely
The
makes
the
it
government, working for the government is complicated?
so complicated.
Wow, I
for,
could hear your eyes roll from here.
for for everybody, for everyone, it becomes more complicated. I do think that if you can get in with just like everyone, just like working with another company, working with certain governments in certain areas and states has proven to not be as difficult. We're a little bit relaxed. I had a client in Florida that did a government job. We're our standards are there, the building standards, but they're not different for a government agency job than it is for a residential or true commercial job anywhere else. So the not back then anyways, but it just was not made into this massive complex situation where the one that I've got in California who quoted on a government job, it's just developing into so much that I'm debating if it's something that we want to support him on just because of how complex California's kind of making the situation.
If those of you that are watching that are not familiar with a lot of the terms that Shauna threw out through the course of our half-hour conversation, if we haven't scared you yet, there is hope, right? And the hope that you're bringing to this organization or this niche of accounting professionals is your B4CG, which is allowing people who might be interested in learning more about this niche of job costing, contractors, home builders, special trades, and being able to provide those kinds of services. So talk a little bit about the B4CG and how they might be helped by some of these foreign terms that you're throwing out there, and how they might be helped out.
B4CG came about as a way for me to still have a little bit more, for me to have more input, have more of a reach than working on client files myself. So I've supported the contractor industry off and on for the history of my accounting career of 25 years, a long time. But I've loved, I've learned a lot all along my way. And I've learned a lot more now as an independent accounting professional for the last 10 plus years now of having my own firm. B4CG is a membership platform for independent accounting professionals. And now we are working on an actual firm build out for small and medium sized firms to also enroll. I've put together a massive amount of wonderful resources, including Dan and his School of Bookkeeping. So QuickBooks education, certification assistance, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be really amazing. I've put together a bunch of internal documents for how to run a firm, templates to how to communicate and workflows, but also I've got a massive growing tech stack that I'm putting together from both a firm ownership standpoint and again, from a support standpoint for your trade contractor clients. So just trying to put this community together to provide extra education, materials, and support. And then there'll be monthly coaching calls as a part of that. And then on the other side, we're also going to be partnering or we're going to be assisting in trade business owners that are coming to us and looking for accounting professionals to help support them in their business. So we're doing a little matchmaking within that program too. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the coming years do for you and in this journey. So appreciate you joining us. If you want more information about the B4CG, I can too many rhyming letters.
I know, I'm so sorry.
for me to say that in one fell swoop. But I'll get it. I'll get it down. But we have the QR code. You can learn more about that, whether you're an accounting professional or a small business. You can choose your own adventure with Shanna. And the next time that we have the workshop live, we will be talking about billing and revenue recognition. Ooh, very great.
I know.
Now we're talking money coming in.
Yay.
We've been talking about the costing. But now we want to talk about money coming in.
Yeah.
So look for joining us the next time, and we hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time on the Workshop Wednesday. And that wraps up another insightful episode of Workshop Wednesday, brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion and took away some valuable tips and strategies to enhance your bookkeeping practice. Remember, if you want to stay ahead in the world of bookkeeping and accounting, be sure to visit Schoolofbookkeeping.com. With a wide range of courses, resources, and expert guidance, you'll find everything you need to sharpen your skills and boost your career. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. Your reviews help us reach more listeners and continue to bring you the best content every week. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to us on social media or send us an email at support@schoolofbookkeeping.com. We love hearing from our listeners and are always looking for new ideas to explore. Thanks for tuning in to Workshop Wednesday. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep excelling in your bookkeeping journey. I am Dan DeLong, and we'll see you next time.